Coming up on Lawmakers, new details from the House committee looking into the Brian Nichols trial. A physical fitness bill turns controversial in the Senate. And we talk with Tom Crawford for a look back at this week under the Gold Dome. Those stories and more are coming up next.
This is Lawmakers, your source for all the news from under the Gold Dome. Here are your anchors, Wandy Lawson and David Zelski.
Good evening, everyone. Also on Lawmakers, things get juicy as the House votes to create the Georgia Blueberry Commission.
And the Senate approves an expansion of the Hope Scholarship. But first, our top story tonight, body mass index numbers cause controversy on the Senate floor. The Student Health and Physical Education, or SHAPE Act, got a workout this morning before passing the Senate. Lawmakers Bridget Snabb joins us at the Capitol with more. Bridget.
David, according to the Department of Human Resources, 1 out of 3 children in Georgia is obese or at risk for obesity. The SHAPE Act brings awareness to this problem by requiring Georgia schools to report the aggregate body mass index of their students on the Department of Education website. The bill's sponsor, Senator Joseph Carter, opened the discussion.
Sally, step into the office. Hop up on the scales. How tall are you? Okay, great. That's the process. That's as invasive as it gets. And the school system then takes those measurements and they plug those into a formula to calculate BMI. And that BMI score for that school, not for that student, for that school, is submitted to the Department of Education. They post, under this legislation, they post that school score on the website.
If you look at this bill, all we're doing is stepping on a scale and seeing how tall they are. I remember back in the 1960s when we had the presidential fitness test, and we participated in the program. I think that was President Kennedy. I'm dating myself, but that's okay. I remember getting weighed. I remember having to participate in physical education. We were on the right wave then, and I don't know how we ever got off of it.
You know, the present generation of children will be the first generation of children since the birth of our country to have a shorter life expectancy, a shorter lifespan than their parents.
Other senators, however, exercised their right to oppose the bill. The most spirited opponent was probably Preston Smith, who was concerned that the bill constituted government overreaching and opens the door to bullying.
At what point does the reach of government become limited? When does the long arm of government stop reaching into some area of our lives? Then it gets better. Line 30, including the provision of money and other incentives to schools for attaining certain levels. Come on, pick it up, fat kid. We're going to get some money from the governor. If you don't pick it up, you're causing us to lose money. Are you kidding me?
Senator Carter reacted to the opposition.
I wasn't surprised that there was some opposition. Anytime you tackle this issue, and a number of people have made this attempt in the past, there's been opposition. But quite frankly, I think that the situation across our country and here in Georgia as well has risen to such epidemic proportions that we've got to take a step. This bill makes this height and weight measurement, which I think most kids know what those numbers are anyway, but it makes that assessment completely confidential. It makes the results of that height and weight measurement completely confidential, disseminated only to parents upon their request.
Regardless, it passed by a vote of 37 to 13. In addition to reporting aggregate BMI measurements, the bill also requires schools to post whether they are following DOE requirements. The SHAPE Act now works its way over to the House. Reporting from the Capitol, I'm Bridget Snabb for Lawmakers.
Okay, thank you very much, Bridget. Well, prior to the SHAPE Act, the Senate passed legislation that could add a few more Georgia residents to the Hope Scholarship eligibility. Senator John Bullock begins with Senate Bill 492, which opens the door for the few Georgia residents who attend Florida schools.
The entity that accredited the school they went to in Florida was not listed under the Georgia Hope Scholarship law. And what this does is it just adds the Florida Council of Independent Schools as a certifying entity under the Hope Scholarship.
Senator John Wiles then took the well to explain his committee substitute to the bill. which deals with students who took AP courses in high school.
It allows those students who have worked really hard, who have a lot of college credit going to college, but don't have quite the Hope Scholarship in that first semester. If they get a qualifying grade point average in the first semester, they're able to apply for Hope in the second semester instead of waiting until their sophomore year.
Now, Senate Bill 492 passed 50-1 with the Wiles Committee substitute and now goes over to the House.
We have new information about the efforts of a House Legislative Committee charged with looking into the expenditures of the Brian Nichols case. Lawmakers Sandra Parrish now joins us with more on that. Sandra.
In Wani, the new judge in the case of accused Fulton County Courthouse shooter Brian Nichols has agreed to the committee's request to release some of the expense reports in the case. So far, $2 million has been spent on the 3-year-old case, which has yet to seat a jury. Representative Barry Fleming and 2 other House members were appointed by the Speaker to look into the case, which some say has all but bankrupted the Public Defender's Office.
It's our charge as a legislature to make sure that the taxpayers' dollars are spent well, and to have $2 million spent on a case that should have been over with probably for $500,000 or less. That's not a wise use of money. And there are other cases that have to be tried across the state.
The committee's request to see the documents had long been ignored by the previous judge in the case, but Judge Boniford has agreed to release some of the reports, mostly including hotel expenses by the Nichols team. The release of the other reports documenting amounts paid to private attorneys has been opposed by the defense.
There's obviously something there they don't want the public to know. And that was the whole, one of the reasons this inquiry began, as to how could we spend $2 million in taxpayers' funds on a death penalty case where the murders were really pretty obvious and some of the crimes were even caught on video, and not be able to pick a jury and try this case and let justice be done. So that's the ultimate question.
Fleming has introduced legislation from the committee's findings so far.
One of the problems we think in this case is that you had an unelected senior judge trying this case. And so part of the legislation is not to allow that to happen, to say that a judge who tries a death penalty case has to be elected and has to be a current sitting judge, not a retired senior judge. The other part of the legislation is to say that there will be a cost sharing between the state and the county, so that the local judge sitting hearing the case has to work with county commissioners who have to fund his budget to try a case. And the third part is to have something called a flat fee arrangement. That is where there's a flat fee paid to the defense attorneys to try the case, and this, as opposed to the way we did it this time in the Nichols trial, not be charged by the hour. And there is a thought that that could provide some cost savings as well.
Representative Fleming tells me he expects his legislation to be on the floor of the House sometime next week. A hearing on the release of the remaining expense reports will be held before Judge Boniford on Tuesday. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Sandra Parrish.
Thanks so much, Sandra. Well, sometimes a seemingly innocuous bill can get its sponsor in a jam. Just ask Representative Tommy Smith, who spearheaded the passage of House Bill 649, creating the Georgia Blueberry Commission.
And so this just adds blueberries to a long list of Georgia products that be able to have a commodity commission.
Sounds simple enough, but not to Representative Charlize Byrd, who is sponsoring legislation to sunset all commissions and agencies.
I just want to be sure that every time we vote for a new commission, agency, department, authority, that they are able to justify themselves through this sunset process.
One by one, the members of the Agricultural Committee rose to speak against the Byrd Amendment, startling even the Speaker.
What purpose does Representative Levitas rise?
Mr. Speaker,
you got a lot of blueberries out there in the 82nd, don't you?
Yes, sir, when we're not slopping hogs on the back 40.
I understand. The agricultural guru from DeKalb County.
I have a parliamentary inquiry, sir.
But I will recognize you're on the Agricultural Committee, aren't you?
And is it not true, Mr. Speaker, that those of us who serve proudly under the chairmanship of Chairman McCall have vetted this issue and believe that the House ought to vote up or down on the bill and vote against this amendment? Let's move on with the people's business.
The Byrd Amendment failed. HB 649 passed 146 to 10 and moves to the Senate. After defending the Blueberry bill, Representative Levitas was back on his feet, questioning restaurateur Alan Peake about HB 851, which offers tax credits for rehabilitating historic properties.
Would either Cheddar's or Long John Silver franchises count as historical properties and qualify for this tax exemption?
Well, Representative One, you got the wrong restaurants. Captain D's.
Captain D's.
Captain D's. Captain D's.
I'm so focused on the agricultural products that go into those restaurants that sometimes I get confused.
And to answer your question, no, all the restaurants that I own are new, fresh, and got great food.
HB 851 passed with one dissenting vote. It now moves to the Senate.
Now back to the Senate, where they also passed legislation that protects mortgage appraisers and a bill that keeps insurance companies from being double billed in certain situations. Senator Ralph Hudgens explains the insurance bill, SB 348.
The whole scope of the bill is that when there's an accident in a city or in a county, and it has to, if it's in Georgia, it's in one or the other, the cities and counties get premium taxes. They get 2.5% of the volume of insurance that's written in their jurisdiction as a premium tax, and this premium tax is designated by law to pay for several things, and among those things are the cleanup after the accidents. Several cities and counties started billing insurance companies for cleanup, and I felt that that was a double dipping, it was duplication, and so this law, if passed and signed by the governor, will prevent that from happening.
Senator Horacina Tate then took the well to explain SB 496, which protects home appraisers from the pressure to give fraudulent appraisal values.
This bill directly prohibits a mortgage broker from influencing the independent judgment of an appraiser with respect to the value of property. Why do we need this legislation? There are 90% of appraisers in a 2006 national survey by the October research firm said that they had experienced threats, non-payment of fees, and forms of coercion. Many of them have lost their businesses because they refuse to play the game. This survey further stated that they felt pressure being made for them to do bogus valuations.
Senate Bill 496 passed unanimously, and Senator Hudgens' insurance bill passed 40-8, so both bills now go to the House. Well, legislation that allows foreign nationals to keep their license from their home country passed the Senate today as well. Senate Bill 488, sponsored by Senator Chip Rogers, also includes exemptions for foreign drivers here with a lawful presence.
We invite these people to come here and work here for a temporary time. They leave to go back home and they don't have a driver's license anymore. So this would help them in making sure they do not have to relinquish their current home country license, and that they can be given a temporary Georgia driver's license at the same time. The second thing this bill does is it helps those people that are here in an indefinite status because they are refugees. And a refugee, of course, oftentimes doesn't get a permanent status for quite some time. Right now, the current law requires them to go back every single year and renew their driver's license. That's a very expensive proposition for them, and this will allow them to not have to do that but every 3 years.
And we'd like to recommend a website that's a valuable resource for information about the Georgia General Assembly. Go to www.legis.ga.gov. That website is a great research tool that we at Lawmakers use on a regular basis.
Well, it's the end of another legislative week. That means it's time to talk with Tom Crawford of CapitolImpact.com. The crossover 30th legislative day is approaching, meaning if a bill doesn't pass its chamber of origin by the end of that day, it cannot be taken up in the other chamber. So I asked Tom about any major bills that may find trouble getting through by the end of day 30.
The biggest one, David, is probably Speaker Glenn Richardson's tax plan, the one we've talked about a lot before on earlier shows. He still has not brought that up for a vote, and he needs to do it before day 30. Yesterday, the Democrats may have thrown a bit of a monkey wrench into it by calling a press conference and saying that they're not going to vote for the bill, and they think they've got the votes to defeat it, because a major part of it is a constitutional amendment that requires a 2/3 majority, and the Republicans don't quite control 2/3 of the seats in the House. So in both the House and the Senate, the Democrats are vowing to defeat the bill. They think it's not the answer to the state's future. Of course, the Speaker disagrees with him, and he seems determined to bring it up for a vote again. But right now, it doesn't look like it has a very good future.
Something the House and Senate seemed to be agreeing on at first was the amended 08 budget, but right now it's in conference committee, and there's some major differences they're still trying to hammer out.
They still have yet to come to agreement on the education portion of it. Both sides want to put more money into our public schools, but there's a disagreement over whether to do it right now in the middle of the current fiscal year or wait until the fiscal year that starts on July 1. It seems like more of a difference in accounting to you and me, David. but this seems to be an important difference to the two sides here, and they can't seem to come together on it just yet.
A major issue last year was Sunday sales. It didn't really get too far last year, but it has resurfaced again. What's the latest?
The Senate took up a couple of bills this week that deal with smaller issues involving Sunday sales. One bill would allow you to sell alcohol in a limousine if you have a license to do so on Sundays or any other day of the week. The other is a bill to allow Gwinnett County in the new baseball stadium they're going to build for the Atlanta Braves minor league team. It's a bill to allow them to sell beer on Sundays at the stadium. Both of those were passed by the Senate and sent over to the House, and it is expected that in the House at least one of those bills will be amended to include some language that would allow Sunday package sales of beer, wine, perhaps liquor in the state. So the issue is back with us. It's definitely back in play, and with 14 days left in the session, all sorts of things can happen there.
Legislation that takes a look at Georgia's northern border up at Tennessee, which would give us back some of the Tennessee River passed last week, and that story continued a little this week with a visitor.
The mayor of Chattanooga, I think his name is Ronald Littlefield, decided that he would send drought-stricken Georgia some water. So he sent one of his assistants down here in a pickup truck literally filled with 2,000 bottles of water. The particular assistant was also dressed up in Davy Crockett coonskin garb, which lent a certain flair to the whole incident. But he made it to the Capitol safely. He delivered the water. I think everybody was happy to get it, and they seemed to take it in the humorous spirit in which it was intended.
Well, they are looking at a little bit of transportation, and actually one of those things deals with Chattanooga, our friendly neighbors to the north. Talk about some of the transportation initiatives that they heard a little about this week.
There was some talk, and there's been some talk about this before, of putting in a maglev, one of those futuristic magnetically induced trains traveling between Chattanooga and Atlanta. They have a lot of these futuristic trains over in China and Japan. It would be quite an expensive proposition here. Even with federal funding, Georgia and Tennessee would have to put up a lot of money for it. So that may be way, way off in the future, but a lot of folks get excited when you talk about things like that.
All right, well, a lot of interesting stuff. Thanks again, Tom Crawford, CapitolImpact.com.
Great to be here.
Well, from immigration issues to water wars, we take a look back at this week's Capitol Action. The legislative week began on Tuesday with the Senate agreeing to allow Sunday sales at the new Gwinnett County home of the Braves farm team and to allow limo drivers to offer spirits to their Sunday passengers.
Baseball, beer, and peanuts. They are as American as apple pie.
The Senate also voted to extend MARTA bus and rail routes in 5 metro Atlanta counties, paving the way for service to the new Gwinnett County baseball park.
So that if MARTA wanted to have a line that went to what will be, I suppose, the Gwinnett County Braves games, they could do so in the same way, I'm told, as MARTA provides service to Six Flags.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you in English.
Meanwhile, in the House, a controversial English-only constitutional amendment was defeated.
Yo también soy América. I, too, am America.
The House Intergovernmental Affairs Committee revived an effort to incorporate the Dunwoody community into DeKalb County. Reversing his opposition, Representative Mark Hatfield led the committee's reconsideration vote on Senate Bill 82.
Representative Malloy, Senator Weber, they have all worked very hard on this legislation to give the citizens of Dunwoody an opportunity to vote, and I feel like it deserves a vote on the floor.
Wednesday, the border war with Tennessee took a lighter note with a diplomatic visit from a Chattanooga delegation bearing water.
Possession is 9/10 of the law. We've had it long enough that, that we should own it.
Georgia legislators say this peace offering will not deter their efforts to reclaim a portion of the Tennessee River.
I am graciously accepting that water as a down payment on the billions of gallons of Georgia water that feeds the Tennessee River every day from our rivers, creeks, and streams.
And the House moved to breathe new life into House Resolution 413, amending the state constitution to require that all state business be conducted in English.
The House has reconsidered its action on House Resolution 413 and failing to give it a constitutional majority. By rule, House Resolution 413 will reappear on the general calendar in its numerical spot where it was before it arrived at this body. It's back in technically in rules.
Yesterday, the House voted to seize the cars of illegal immigrants who are involved in accidents or have traffic violations.
You got a legal Georgia citizen who's abiding by the law, who has his insurance premium go up because he has to file on his own insurance premium, and that's if he's able to file. I could cite you story after story after story of people who have been killed, their lives have been taken.
We have certain protections against unlawful search and seizures, and you have to have something called probable cause. There's no requirement for probable cause as far as I read this bill.
Democratic House and Senate leaders voiced their intentions to kill the tax overhaul, spearheaded by House Speaker Glenn Richardson.
If you have death in your family,
that's right,
the funeral service and even the digging of the grave will be taxed. And when you go to get your taxes done, guess what? You will be taxed.
We believe the Republican tax plan boils down to simply this. You want to tax our groceries and starve our schools.
And that's a look back at this week's action under the Gold Dome.
The Athens-Clarke County DUI Court was recognized today as one of the nation's best courts targeting drunk drivers. Lawmakers Keosha Jackson was there and has the story.
On behalf of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, the National Drug Court Institute, please join me in congratulating Athens-Clarke County DUI Court for being selected as one of only 4 nationally recognized DUI Academy courts in the country. Thank you, Your Honor, for your leadership.
We recognize that it's increased responsibility and it means more work for us, but we're dedicated and committed. We're just pleased and honored to be able to have this opportunity to work with other people in implementing these courts.
Judge Lawrence also spelled out the components of the Athens-Clarke County DUI Court's award-winning program.
First and foremost, it's enhanced supervision. The persons who come into our court program are more supervised than they've ever been supervised in their life. Secondly, they're placed in a program of extended counseling and treatment. The minimum period of time in our programs are 12 months. Thirdly, it's frequent and random observed alcohol and other drug testing. Fourthly, it would be continuing judicial monitoring with the court. I see all of our participants in the courtroom every other week.
Again, the Athens-Clarke County DUI Court has been designated as one of the nation's 4 academy courts and will serve as a site for training and technical assistance for others wanting to create DUI courts. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Keosha Jackson.
Former State Senator Donzella James announced her candidacy for the U.S. Congress at a press conference on the steps of the Capitol. Lawmakers Minu Hosseini has the story.
You see, as these winds of change that we're talking about all over this country, they are political winds of change. And that's the kind of change that we need right now. It's time for a change.
That was the theme of today's press conference. James spoke of the economy and the school systems in her district and the improvements that need to be made. She said that she is not competing against incumbent Congressman David Scott, but competing for the community.
So remember, success is not always measured in financial terms. Success can be measured with improved educational systems, improved health care, adequate housing, increased federal aid for transportation, elimination of illegal drugs, increased jobs, jobs, jobs. It's time for a change.
Donzella James and Congressman David Scott will compete against each other in the July primaries, and whoever wins will have their name on the ballot in November. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Minu Hosseini.
Yesterday, the Senate Judiciary Committee gave a do-pass recommendation to legislation that would penalize motorists who cause serious injury due to right-of-way violations. Lawmakers Dana Abercrombie has more.
Senate Bill 438 would create a second offense penalty for drivers who commit right-of-way violations that lead to serious injury. Senator Jeff Mullis explains.
Well, as you know, some of our most vulnerable riders on the road are our motorcyclists and bicyclists, and this bill helps protect them a little more. As you know, driving is a privilege in Georgia, and you must be in full control of your vehicle at all times. This makes sure we pass that message on. And if an injury happens in a right-of-way with a motorcyclist or a bicyclist or a pedestrian or a farm vehicle carrying produce, then the fine is more substantial.
A first offense will be punishable by a fine of $250. A second offense will be punishable by a fine of $500 up to $1,000 and possible imprisonment.
This bill is very important to the motorists in Georgia, especially families like Phil and Lisa McCollum, who lost their 24-year-old son in 2005. A motorcyclist went across several lanes of traffic and struck their son and killed him. And we can go on and on about people that have been either killed or seriously injured in motorcycle accidents from motorists not being accountable and being negligent drivers and failing to yield right-of-ways, and we just want them to be held accountable.
Again, Senate Bill 438 received a do-pass recommendation and now goes before the Senate Rules Committee. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Dana Abercrombie.
The Community Christian School Jazz Ensemble performed today in the north wing of the Capitol. Lawmakers Caroline Niaga brings us all that jazz.
We received a letter from our Representative Steve Davis letting us know that the opportunity was available to come down and showcase school groups, so we decided that we would take advantage of it, and wrote the correct person, and they let me know that they wanted us down, so that's the reason we're here today. And we have visited the fourth floor museum. We thought it would be nice if the kids had an educational experience in addition to a recreational experience.
So why the Capitol?
Well, I like coming to the Capitol because I've never been here and it's cool.
Because the Native American Indian symbols up there, the arrowhead.
That's fine by me. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Caroline Niaga.
Well, in an era before baseball was the subject of doping scandals, James Moore was called the most perfect first baseman of all time. Today, the 91-year-old veteran of Negro League's Atlanta Black Crackers came to the House to give legislators a history lesson.
I'm so thankful that I was fortunate enough to be a part of I would say was an ambassador, more or less, for the Negro League players who come on now. Jackie Robinson and the rest of the fellows who come on, Hank and Willie Mays and all the rest of them who came behind me. So I'm just proud to be honored in such a way, you know, as I said earlier, repeating myself, to just live long enough to be able to smell the flowers and roses and everything and just see people. And I'm just so thankful for you to having me here and honoring me. Thank you very much.
Well, lawmakers will not be seen Monday evening because the Georgia General Assembly will not be in session. Lawmakers returns Tuesday night at 7 with all the latest Capitol news. If you've missed any part of this Lawmakers broadcast, tune in Monday morning when Lawmakers repeats at 5:30 a.m. You can also keep up with all the action under the Gold Dome daily on your local GPB radio station during Morning Edition, All Things Considered, and evenings at 6 p.m. on Georgia Gazette. Now, stay tuned for Rick Steves' Europe Classic. Tonight's episode features France's Alsace region. That program is coming up next here on GPB.
And that is our broadcast for this, the 26th Legislative Day of 2008. I'm David Zelski.
And I'm Wandy Lawson. Happy Leap Day. We'll see you on Tuesday.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.